The setting is the Capitoline Hill in Rome in the first century. A crowd gathers around a man dressed in robes who is making great claims of his magical power. For the past several days, he has been wowing the crowd with great displays of sorcery, and today it's said he will solidify his power by ascending to heaven in view of all gathered there. It is whispered that he has the ear of the emperor himself. Amongst the crowd, unbeknown to the sorcerer, is the holiest man alive after the death of his lord, St. Peter. He had come to Rome in order to impart the Holy Spirit to the people through the laying on of hands, when he had heard of this man, Simon Magus, and his claims. Slowly, at first, then faster and faster, the man starts to levitate, ascending over the heads of the gathered throngs until he looms above them. St. Peter, understanding what he sees before him, clasps his hands and starts to pray, calling upon the Holy Spirit and the sovereignty of Christ. And Simon falls to his death, his sorcery undone. This excerpt comes from the Acts of Peter, an apocryphal work that serves as the second part of the account of St. Peter and Simon Magus that is referenced in the Bible, where the two first meet in Samaria, and Simon Magus, upon seeing the power of the miracles that the apostles are working, tries to buy their knowledge of thaumaturgy and wonder working. The apostles naturally refuse, and the sin of simony is thereafter named. This action by St. Peter is known as an act of thaumaturgy. The word thaumaturgy has been widely adopted in popular media, but its true meaning in an occult sense is a type of wonder working. Thaumaturgy is the process by which saints perform miracles, alchemists gain enlightenment, and priests perform the sacraments. While thaumaturgy is more of a harnessing of a divine force, there also exists a more meticulous ritual school of early Christian magic known collectively as Goetia. Now, the Lemegeton, which I have right here actually, also known as the Lesser Key of Solomon, or Lemegeton Clavicula Solomonis, the Little Key of Solomon, is an anonymous grimoire, anonymous, focused on demonology, sorcery, mysticism, and ritual magic. Modernly, it was compiled in the mid-17th century from materials dating back to the founding of the Second Temple in the early days. It is pseudo-biographically attributed to King Solomon, drawing on the biblical legend of his wisdom in controlling demons through a magical ring and the divine knowledge imparted to him directly from God. The text claims to reveal the whole art of Solomon, presenting methods for summoning and commanding spirits, with the structure divided into 5 separate books. It is one of the most influential grimoires in Western occult tradition, serving as a handbook for ceremonial magic. The Lemegeton is distinct from the Greater Key of Solomon, which is a separate grimoire. The Greater Key mostly focuses on planetary magic and binding talismans, where the Lesser Key focuses on summoning and commanding various spirits, which are divided into demons, angels, and elemental spirits. While both are part of the Solomonic cycle of grimoires, they are distinct in this way. Now, the origin of the text itself in the modern sense are somewhat obscure, with no definitive author or exact date of a composition. It likely emerged in England or continental Europe during the 17th century, a period of enlightened interest in occultism, and the scientific revolution and religious turmoil coming out of the English Civil War and the 30 Years' War. The name Lemegeton may derive from a reference in the Ars Notoria to Solomon's treatise of spiritual and secret experiments. Now, the grimoire's content draws from a chain of earlier demonological and magical texts, the Summa Monarchia Daemonium in 1577 by Johann Weyer, the Steganographa by Johannes Trismegius, and the Heptaphoron by Pietro di Urbano in sometime in the late 15th century. Now, Probably the most well-known author in this sense is Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, who provided a lot of philosophical underpinnings for spiritual classifications. While the Lesser Key of Solomon is seen as the culmination of these works with a tradition dating back to Solomon, it's very clear in the literary tradition that parts of it had been floating around in pieces by different authors for centuries, but it was all compiled together and rebound cohesively in the Lesser Key of Solomon, just to make that clear. Now, it's a composite text with some varying in completeness. Some omit the Ars Notoria, others include Rudd's angelic pairings, which is a part of Enochian magic, which we'll get into. But fundamentally, it's always composed of the Goetia, the angel stuff, and the spirits. The most famous part is definitely the Ars Goetia, detailing the evocation of 72 demons, including their names, appearances, ranks, powers, and seals. It provides rituals for summoning and binding them. The Ars Thurgoria Goetia describes 31 aerial spirits, or kind of like nature spirits, fundamental spirits, such as the 4 prime spirits of the wind, the compass points. They are emperors and princes. There are also angels or spirits of the different hours of the day in the zodiac degrees. This is split into 2 parts for invoking spirits temporal and those celestial. This part actually comes from Paul the Apostle. This is a lot of his work on the celestial spirits, the zodiac, the degrees of the day, the hours of the day. And this is concurrent with an earlier Greek tradition that we see with a lot of those early Greek occultists and their mystery schools. The Ars Almadal instructs on how to create a wax tablet for contacting angels through scrying. And this is not just a tablet, but it's kind of a multi-tool. It goes into the ritual garb that some summoning rituals require, some talismans, some different items, ritual swords, scepters, all the gear you need to really do this, and also the rituals themselves. There's also the Ars Notoria, which is a composite of the medieval Ars Notoria and the Ars Brevis, containing prayers and orations for gaining knowledge, memory, and eloquence. This is a sort of esoteric mnemonic device technique that was practiced by the early Greeks as well, which is very interesting. Now, the text itself distinguishes natural from diabolical magic, emphasizing the operator's utmost preparation, ergo the seals, circles, incantations, and the risks involved. Now, I know that was a lot, but in summary, the Lesser Key of Solomon is a 17th century compilation of ritual magic dating back to the time of King Solomon and even some earlier sources before him. This divine knowledge of the rituals and incantations to bind and control demons, invoke angels, and the spirits of nature. Moving on to John Dee. Now, John Dee was born in London on July 13th, 1527. Dee was a brilliant scholar who was educated at Cambridge. He mastered mathematics, astronomy, and navigation. He was also an advisor to Queen Elizabeth I. A bit of a trivia fact for you, he was the one who coined the term British Empire. So how's that for you? Dee amassed one of Europe's largest libraries at his Mortlake home, studying ancient texts, alchemy, the Greeks, and the Chaldean scripts. He basically pioneered what we call now Enochian magic, which is an alphabet, and Dee claims to be the language of the angels, which mirrors a much earlier idea that we'll get into. Enochian magic is a system of angelic communication and ritual magic that John Dee claimed to receive from angels. Dee believed these revelations came from angels of the biblical Enoch, who walked with God and aimed to access divine or pre-fall knowledge. The system emerged through works that he wrote, like the Liber Loganeth, the Book of the Speech of God, containing 49 by 49 tables of angelic letters, kind of like a grid, and the Heptaria Mystica, detailing 7 planetary angels, which goes back to a part in the Lesser Key of Solomon, which is the St. Paul stuff, denoting angels of the zodiac, the hours of the day, the directions. And John Dee builds upon this by having a grid system for it in a very orderly, systematized way. Now, the angels provided a unique language composed of 21 letters, grammar, and vocabulary to Dee, used in 19 Enochian calls or key ciphers to invoke angels and elemental forces. Dee considered it to be the divine Adamic language that predated human tongues after the Tower of Babel incident. These systems also include 30 aethers, or spiritual realms, and 4 elemental tables, which he calls watchtowers, representing a cosmic hierarchy much like we see in the Lesser Key. Each table governs the 4 elements, water, fire, air, earth, with angels, kings, and emperors used for holy evocation. Dee also used similar ritual tools such as sigils, wax seals, and tables inscribed with the Enochian letters, believing they help to facilitate angelic contact. Now, the concept of Enochian mirrors earlier esoteric ideas of an original primordial language. The biblical concept goes that men and angels once communicated in a divine celestial language that could affect the world physically. This would be the tongue that Adam spoke in the garden, and that his descendants spoke until the tongues of man were fragmented with the Tower of Babel incident. In the Book of Enoch, another apocryphal source, the fallen angels who have been living on earth and teaching mankind celestial forbidden knowledge actually go to Enoch to ask him to represent them before the Lord, to state their case for them. These fallen angels are distinct and separate from the rebel angels that joined Lucifer in his rebellion. These angels are more like fence-sitting centrists that were cast out for not being loyal to God or for not choosing to follow Lucifer, just kind of waiting to see what happened, which is just as bad, possibly worse. These fallen ones had been interbreeding with mankind for centuries, teaching their children and their offspring this forbidden knowledge, as Enoch refers to it. This is in fact where John Dee gets his name for the original divine language as the language of Enoch that was spoken before the Great Flood and the Tower of Babel. This whole sequence fits themes of humanity slowly descending in terms of spiritual power, first being server banned from Eden, then losing knowledge of the celestial tongue, then having the majority of those divine genetic lines purged during the Great Flood, which was its purpose mostly. It seems to be a side effect or part of the Gnosis process that those early humans who were closer to Adam lived much longer, the records indicating they lived for hundreds, sometimes thousands of years, in this much more complete state. The same is found in pre-dynastic Egyptian writings. But this brings us to Western Hermeticism. Gnosticism was another early sect of Christianity that was based around ancient Chaldea. The purpose of Gnosticism was to achieve gnosis, or enlightenment. This is accomplished through achieving greater and greater spiritual awakenings until a practitioner eventually reaches the original divine state of man that the ancients possessed. As a sect, of course, Gnosticism was not one unified group, but a collection of competing sects with different ideas about how to do this. But the core of this idea is shared by all ancient rite Christians, including Roman Catholics, Orthodox, and Coptics. These teachings were lost and forgotten for a long time after the fall of the Roman Empire and the rise of Islam, which destroyed, occupied, and burned much of these traditions. But eventually in the Renaissance, these original Greek texts trickled into Europe through Florence and started the modern esoteric mystery schools, such as the Order of Hermes Trismegistus, the Order of the Rosy Cross, or the Rosicrucians, as you might know them. Alchemists in the Middle Ages embraced the idea of thaumaturgy. Now, modern depictions envision the goal of alchemy to transmute lead or iron into gold, but this misses the point. It is not just a physical transfiguration, but a spiritual one. Man is the lead, and through gnosis he can once again become gold, as gold signifies enlightenment, reaching a higher level of spiritual operation. In Roman Catholicism, the sacraments are referred to as the sacred mysteries, hearkening back to the mystery schools that at one time existed alongside it. The Holy Spirit is the imbuer of energy, the animating divine essence of creation. When a prospective priest receives holy orders from the bishop, he is transfigured with the laying on of hands, taking the same first step that the medieval alchemists did, the transmutation of the spirit to a higher purity. The more esoteric side of the faith is rarely discussed in terms of ancient sources and influences, so I hope this video was interesting to you guys. But that's all for today. If you liked it, if you learned anything, if you thought it interesting, do me a favor and subscribe and be on the lookout for more content. All right.